This episode of ENVERT TV is being brought to you by the Indie Bible. The Indie Bible offers affordable music promotion for artists of all genres. For 20 years, the Indie Bible has helped independent artists with music promotion, getting radio airplay, distribution, radio promotion, and much more. The Indie Bible features the most comprehensive music business directory with over 1,500 pages, organized into 16 sections sorted by genre and geographic location, featuring radio stations, booking agencies, and more. The Indie Bible will help you to gain worldwide exposure across the US, Canada, UK, Europe, Australia, Asia, and everywhere else, all on a limited budget. To grab the latest edition of the Indie Bible, click the link in our description below.
I got a check, I'm about to run it up. Watch how I flex, I'm about to run amok. I put in work, did all this work, I wouldn't call it luck. I'm running up. I'm running. Pray that I stay up. Pray up. I said, pray that I stay up. I be jumping out the pot. I felt something, it was hot. Damn, that's just me up in the spot. Watching me like I'm a clock. Run the city every block. Key to success every lock. Icing cake the cherry top. I get a bag for every drop. Come on the scene. Yeah, look mean, it's not what it seems. My life is a dream. I did it just me, I ain't have a team. I'm shining, I beam. I am finessing one hell of a scheme. I am too cool. Gotta find a way to let out the steam.
Hey, what's up, music lovers? It's Flisadam, the editor-in-chief here at ENVERT, and welcome back to another special episode of ENVERT TV. During this special episode, I had a chance to catch up with overall creative Philippe. During our conversation, we discussed cancel culture, the media's sudden embrace of artists across the African diaspora, body positivity, her new single Paris, and much more. Check out our full conversation here. So first and foremost, again, thank you for taking the time out to join me and talk. You've always been a really avid supporter of ENVERT, so we love to back and talk about what's new as artists. Things tend to change, releases come out, artistically you develop and you grow. But I know we were talking about this offline, but I do want to know how you're managing in COVID. I know a lot of artists that initially were suffering as far as creative wise to really record, write, or to think about music at that time. So a lot of artists are shifting out, and I'm wondering how you were managing COVID at that time as an artist.
It was very difficult because I actually had a video shoot that was already scheduled for March 29th. And we went on lockdown, I think maybe a week or two before. So we were just playing it by ear, me and the director, like, well, maybe we could still do it because we didn't know how bad things were, you know? And then once it got to like the end of March, we were like, yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to do this. So we ended up having to cancel it. And that was for my single. And I'm like, man, what am I going to do now? So I literally had to think on my feet and just figure out what to do. But what I will say is it opens up a lane for a lot of the do-it-yourself artists, you know, and I've already been that type of artist. So I think it kind of helped me to just propel that strength more.
Yeah. And I think it's important to kind of make note of is the fact that in this time, I was speaking with friends and even other artists, and they were saying that this time has really forced them to reevaluate themselves as artists and what type of content they're doing and or exploring other creative mediums. Like you said, always DIY. So you've always been able to pivot, whether it's photo shoots, videos, self-directing, self-producing. So I know that definitely was an asset during this time.
I had muted it because I didn't want you to hear the dogs barking in the back because I'm outside in my backyard. But yeah, I definitely had to pivot. And at first it was a little stressful, but then it was like, okay, you're used to doing this. You know how to do this. If anything, there'll be more eyes on you now because people are in the house. They don't have nowhere to go. The standard isn't as high anymore because people know that you can't go out and really do things. So I felt like it was a win, really. And I got to save some money too. I didn't have to spend the money on a video. So I was like, okay, well, it worked out.
Let's talk about navigating as an independent artist. You have quite the story. I know that we've gotten to know each other over the past year or so. And we've covered your debut EP. We've covered a bunch of singles that you put out. But I'm always interested to hear your take and your journey through the independent process, just to kind of reflect on where we were before. We had a conversation about how you navigated through the underground scene, and one of which was doing the pop-up shows, doing the showcases, and building and following authentically with the in-person activity rather than solely releasing music online in the hopes that someone will find you. So can you talk about how that has changed as far as your approach in reaching new fans?
Yeah, that approach has changed also because of the pandemic. So you can't really be out at events and at shows anymore. But it's changed for me because I also feel like I've paid my dues at this point. So I don't really have to be doing all of that anymore. Like, I've created a foundation for myself, and my content kind of speaks for itself. So I think people will just find me organically as long as I'm, doing the right marketing things. And I try to stay as up to date on things like that as possible, like new ways to market myself or new ways to have a rollout and different things that I can do to just keep people engaged. But now I feel like I'm at I'm at the big leagues now. Like, I'm not like an amateur at this anymore. Like, I'm someone who's been doing it a long time, and I'm seasoned at what I do. And I would like to call myself somewhat of an expert at this point. Of course, I'm still always learning, but I have a lot of knowledge about just how things should work. So now it comes I feel like it's more like second nature now. It doesn't seem like work as much.
Yeah. You know what? Interesting word that you just used is marketing. And in marketing, a lot of artists prefer to be hands off in a lot of it. As the famous Prince quote goes, "Let the baker bake." They would rather focus their efforts on the creative side, finding great artists to collaborate with, great engineers and mixers and producers to really get in the studio with, where you've been very hands-on in all approaches. So whether video that before, photo shoots, even doing photo shoots and creative work for other artists, how do you
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, that last part.
how do you balance
okay
creativeness and making sure that you don't become overwhelmed in this?
I ain't gonna lie to you, I be overwhelmed, girl. I be overwhelmed. Like, I really do. I just try to keep it cute and just like stay calm. But some days I'll be like, oh my God, I have so much to do. Especially at this time right now, like, I have a lot of new things going on in my life. Like, I'm moving into a new place, and like, I'm a freelancer now more consistently, and I'm not working for anyone. And then I just dropped a single. So it's a lot going on, but I just try to take it a day at a time. Like, I just wake up that day and I look at my calendar for that day. Like, okay, what do I have to do today? And I don't try to look too far ahead, because then I'll start to feel overwhelmed. I definitely have moments where I get overwhelmed.
As there's some things that artists tend to stay away from as far as social issues, political issues, religious or spiritual conversations, especially online, where in your case, you've been the total opposite. You've been very vocal on your thoughts on a lot of things happening right now.
Yep.
Do you ever feel forced not to speak on something, or do you ever fear backlash from your point of view?
I fear backlash, but I'm someone who, I love dialogue. I love conversation. So I'm interested to hear what people who don't agree with me think. I'm interested to hear their arguments and why they view things a certain way. And they might even open me up in a way to learn something that I didn't know, or to see it from a perspective that I didn't see it from. So, because I have those moments where I feel anxious, like, man, should I say this or should I post this? But then I end up posting it, and then sometimes people will educate me and be like, nah, don't say that, because I've been there, and this is why people do such and such. And then I'm like, oh, okay, damn, I didn't see it like that. Now I know, and even though you have to kind of humble yourself to be able to accept another person's opinion, I'd rather be informed than to just be walking around like, what I think is right, and that's that. Like, that's a stupid way to go through life. If I can see someone else's perspective and then be able to be more open-minded, I'm willing to do that. And I think that's why I always just express how I feel, because I may be wrong, but then let's figure it out. Let's figure out why I'm wrong, and then we'll work it out.
To hear you say that is refreshing to hear from an artist, especially when you have artists that may be as established as you are, or have a large fan base or a large following, and you aren't threatened by opposing views. Because era or climate, especially right now, especially Black Twitter, where they hold that as sacred. They hold that as etched in stone, as if it can't be changed, or your views cannot evolve as you do. Is there anything that you received backlash from, and they didn't go over so well with the fans once you change your viewpoint?
That's a good question. I feel like it happens to me every day on Twitter. Like, I'm always saying something. Like, I'm very big in the Twitter and the Black Twitter community. Like, I'm always saying something ignorant on Twitter, and I'll take that L if someone's like, nah, don't say that. But yeah, I feel like I've said things, like plenty things. I can't even think of something. Like, I say all types of stuff. But yeah, I've definitely gotten backlash. Not OD, but like, I think, okay, let me think of an example. One time I put on Facebook actually that, like, I don't understand why women get pregnant and don't talk about it the whole pregnancy, but then at the end just like pop up with a kid. Like, you know, you didn't tell anyone you were pregnant, you kept this whole big secret. And a lot of women commented like, you know, well, that's my personal business. I don't have to tell anyone that I'm pregnant, or maybe I don't want to talk about it, or maybe it's something that I want to keep private so I can enjoy it on my own and not have people's opinions and comments. And then I had other women tell me that the moment they told people they were pregnant, everyone wanted to give them advice, unsolicited advice, you know? So then I learned, like, maybe that's why some women keep it private and don't want to tell anybody that they're pregnant. So that was something that kind of, you know, was an eye opener for me.
How is the commercial acceptance of the diaspora? And we've had this conversation several times. And what I mean by that is you see that mainstream outlets, whether they're magazine publications, TV shows, web shows, or just traditional blogs, are now covering artists that are sonically influenced by non-American hip-hop rap music. So you have artists that are from all over, whether they're Black French or they're Black Spanish, right? Not Afro-Latino, but meaning being of the diaspora living in Spain, right? And then you have obviously the plethora of African-based artists, whether it's West Africa, East Africa, South Africa, and then you have Haitian artists. Haitian artists have always had a home, and I don't want to speak for Haitian artists, but I found that depending on your geographic location, like you have the Miamis, you have the Atlantas, the Texas artists that have always found a home in hip hop. But I would love to hear your thoughts on the artists of the diaspora, including yourself, now receiving that sort of mainstream coverage.
I'm here for it. You know what I'm saying? I feel like you gotta strike while the iron's hot, and it's like, oh, this is the time that they want to show people love of my complexion and my skin tone, and being Black is popping, and it's dope to talk about real issues like race and sex and things like that. I'm here for it because I've been here for it. You know, I've been talking about these things, whether like I'll look at old Facebook posts, you know how they'll give you like, oh, 7 years ago or whatever, and I'm looking at the things that I was talking about like, you know, women's rights and things like that. And then it's like years later is when things like the Me Too movement starts and Black Lives Matter and all these things. But these were things I've always spoken about. And sometimes I was criticized for being too serious or too woke or too feminist or whatever, you know, whatever labels I used to get. But I would just stick to it. I would just stick to whatever I was doing. And I've always marched to the beat of my own drum, but I'm just happy that everyone is in a place where they're thinking these things and having these conversations, because then it makes it easier for me to have those conversations. And it makes it easier for me to love myself too, because I've always loved myself. But when you feel like you're getting that love from other people, like even something as simple as, I was talking to a friend recently, like posting pictures of myself and posting me in my authentic skin tone, not with a filter on it, not with the flash on. And that's actually considered cool and trendy now, to look darker with a bright color on and all, you know, all of that stuff. So it's just like interesting to see how popular it's becoming, but I'm here for it. Like, I mean, I'm upset that it took so long still, but you know, now that it's here, I'm going to milk it.
Yeah. And I think that you touched on it just in your response and the trendiness of it. Do you fear that once, as you say, this trend has passed, that they're going to revert back? Or do you feel like this focus on exploring the diaspora sonically across the board is here to stay?
It's here to stay because Black people are not letting up. Like they're not going to let it go back to anything other than what it is. Like they're trying to make it better than what it is now. Like, especially I feel like Black Twitter's not going to like, they will drag somebody in a minute and get you canceled. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I don't think it could even go back to that. I think we're in a new world, you know, it's a new world, and it's kind of like, it's anybody's game. Like anybody can make something, even if they weren't the norm or what was popular, what was trendy. I feel like anybody can make a lane for themselves at this point.
So I also wanted to talk with you about your Haitian heritage and how you incorporate that into your art. Now, recently, I think the most recent artist that broke, and I think that I would say mainstream music would be Jessie Wu, formerly of Love and Hip Hop, Miami. She debut single in Haiti, right off the coast. And she's always been an avid voice for Haitian women on social media platforms. So on your single Boat, released off your debut project in 2018, you also touch on that too, your heritage and how Haiti has influenced your creativeness. And you always feature it primarily during artwork or during your creative process. So can you talk a bit more?
Sure. I mean, I'm proud to be Haitian. I love my family, where I'm from. Like, I have immigrant parents, and I feel like when you have immigrant parents, like, it's a completely different experience. You know what I'm saying? And someone who doesn't have that would just won't understand, but it makes your life richer in a way. Like, you just understand so much from a younger age because you've had to kind of live like a dual life. Like, you're American, but you're also something else. So you kind of like go back and forth in between the two. And it teaches you to be diverse. It teaches you to be adaptable. And people always joke and say, like, if you grew up in a Caribbean household, like, you should be able to put that on your resume because the skills that you learn, you know what I mean? But that's just a fact. And the one thing I would say that like sticks out to me the most in my culture that translates into the music is just my work ethic. Like, I like when I go to Haiti and I see the way people live or the way they make a living, like they literally make something out of nothing. Like, they have nothing, and they're still able to like somehow survive and make it work for themselves. So I always remind myself of that when I'm working on something creatively and I'm feeling stuck, or I'm feeling like, oh, I can't think of what to do or how to brand it or whatever. I just remind myself, like, yo, you can literally make something out of nothing. Like, you know what I'm saying? And then things will just come to me. And the next thing you know, I'm in my backyard shooting, or I'm in my bedroom shooting, and I'm just like angling my phone off of my laptop and just making it work. I'm just making it work, and I'm figuring it out, and then it comes out dope. So I think that's the biggest influence that my culture has on my art.
So let's talk about the art. So your last full body of work was released in 2018, to which we there is this give me culture right now with a lot of fan bases where they're looking for an artist to release a project every 6 months, every year. And as I said, your last project, full body of work, was released in 2018. Do you ever feel pressure to continuously produce more music?
Ooh, excuse me, I had to burp. I used to feel pressure, but not anymore, because I'm not just a rapper, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many other things that I do. And I think what I've learned is that your life journey, you're not just going to have one career. You're going to have different careers. And sometimes you're going to like go back and forth between careers or do them simultaneously. And I learned that I'm not just one thing, I'm multifaceted. I can't just be one thing. And because I can't just be one thing, I can't just do one thing all the time. So I can't just be putting music out all the time. I have to do other stuff, like, do creative direction for people, do freelance writing, do creative consulting, like do other things that bring me joy and that are my passions as well, so that when I come back to the music, I can still love it and enjoy it and like it. But if it starts to feel like a job and I have to constantly live up to some sort of expectation, I don't like that pressure. So I don't put that pressure on myself anymore. I'll put music out when I feel like it. I'm not in any rush. Like, the world's not going nowhere. So
let's talk about your new music. So you released Lucy's from 2019, and then you just recently released a new track.
Yep.
What was the inspiration behind it? How did you kind of get started, and what prompted you to release more music?
So the new single is Paris. It's out now on all streaming platforms, and that record came about from a breakup, basically. And but the story is kind of funny, because when we originally started working on the song, we weren't broken up yet. And me and my boyfriend, we did music together. He was a producer, he was an engineer. And when we wrote the hook, like, we were still together. It was just like a funny joke, because he works with a lot of artists and he'll reach out to people on SoundCloud and kind of like, reach out and just pitch himself. Like, hey, I have beats. I see you sing or I see you rap. Like, you know, let's work together. And sometimes he'll connect with people from different countries and he'll be sending them beats and they'll be working together. And he started working with a young lady in France. So I said jokingly one day, like, oh, let me find out you about to leave me for some girl in Paris. Like, you know, and we just joked about it. We wrote a hook. The song sat for months and we never thought about it. And then we broke up and I was like, man, we should go back to that song, you know, and like make it like a full record. And we were still working on music together, even though we were broken up, which was not a good idea because I just feel like it makes it so much messier trying to break up with someone and then you're still working on music. It just makes it too complicated. But we still did it and we wrote the song and we did it together. And yeah, and it was just like, it's weird because people will hear it because they feel like I'm kind of bashing him in the record, but he was there. He recorded it. You know what I mean? It wasn't, and it was just honestly how I felt at that moment. I was upset at the fact that we broke up. I was upset that I had to break up with him and had to leave that relationship because he wasn't giving me what I needed. And that was my way of just kind of like releasing that emotion.
There was your Instagram or your Twitter. You also started to speak a lot about the healing process after that breakup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Vocal about was seeking therapy and journaling and talking and meditating.
Yeah.
For those who find themselves in the situation that you were in, as you outlined it on the track, or as you kind of just spoke about in detail, what advice would you give them?
Surround yourself with people who really rock with you. You know what I mean? Because I honestly say, like, if it wasn't for my homegirls, I would not have made it. Like, I was just like a mess. Even people like you that I went to lunch with and talked with and was able to vent to and just gave me encouragement, like, yo, you're gonna make it, like, you're gonna be fine, this is just a bump in the road, you're gonna feel better soon. And you know, just that encouragement that you need to really get over a heartbreak. And I think you just got to surround yourself with love. You got to surround yourself with people who really care about you and who are going to remind you who you are.
So let's talk about body positivity. I think that now we have really vocal and really visible advocates for it. You're going to accept this body as it is.
Mm-hmm. You know how they be like, oh, you're going to get this, you're going to take this summer body however it comes. Like
the memes of the on the side slamming. My favorite. We have this conversation often, whether it's supporting artists, with actors, with activists, with creatives behind the scenes, that you often hear about them not reaching a milestone or them not being given an offer based on what they physically appear like. And to kind of one of the examples that keep finding themselves in the public is Lizzo. Liz living her life, minding her business, and somehow she's always brought into these conversations about what a pop star should look like, or how she's healthy, or how she will be so much better if she did X, Y, and Z. So can you talk about your journey through body positivity?
Yeah, that's a good one. I never really struggled with that, only because I've always been like kind of smaller. But what I will say is that I've felt the need to, like, you know, be more sexy or show more body or wear certain things. And I think it's unfortunate that people are that superficial, you know, because I just don't live in a world like that. Like, I don't see someone and immediately like, oh, they're fat, or they're like, that's just not where my mind goes immediately. I'm more like, oh, I like their outfit or their clothes or whatever. Like, other things attract me. But I think it's unfortunate, like, but you can't change people. I've realized that, like, you could argue with somebody about something like that, and if they think like that, that's how they're gonna think. But fortunately, I've always had a strong I've always had a strong idea of who I am, you know, so I never really let people's opinions get to me too crazy. Like, I might be hurt about it for like a day or two, but I'll always bounce back. Like, I'm never, and that's why I'm happy for Lizzo too. Like, I mean, some people I know, I've had friends who are like, I don't like her. She always naked. She's inappropriate. She's always twerking or whatever. But, and some friends say that it has nothing to do with her size. It's genuinely just because of, they feel like she's just doing too much. But I do think that her size plays a role. You know, I do think that if she was smaller, maybe half the people that are bothered probably wouldn't be. But yeah, I'm happy for her that she's continuing to be confident, you know, and she doesn't care, because then she creates a lane for other women to do the same, even if they're not as big as her, even if they have some other insecurity that has nothing to do with size, but it may be their skin tone or their physical features or whatever.
And I think that's important to kind of talk about, because the thing that you just pointed out is unbiased consciousness of, by unconscious biasness. So when, well, if someone else is doing it, I would still be bothered. Where you have I hate to keep bringing up these examples, but the most recent one was Saweetie posted a video about customizing a McDonald's sandwich or something like that, where she put like French fries and like she put a bunch of stuff.
Oh, I saw it.
Kind of concocted this massive sandwich, and while she's eating it in her bedazzled bra and jeans, I thought she was fabulous, right? So
she did.
And immediately people were like, oh, well, if Lizzo was doing this, you guys would be losing your mind, calling her unhealthy. But because Saweetie is aesthetically what you guys prefer, when she's doing something like this, it's not a problem. But when Lizzo was on the working out, is, oh, you need to do more, you need to do better. Why is it that? So this kind of unconsciousness that sometimes we are biased in ways that we don't even realize it.
That's true. I think so.
So, Lord, it just ain't that just pissed me off.
Yeah, that's very true. And sometimes you have to check yourself as a person. Because I check myself regularly. Like I was tweeting about that recently, that I try to check myself whenever I'm thinking something, or I'm expressing a certain viewpoint. I try to think like, okay, is this genuinely my viewpoint, or is this just based off of like maybe what society has put in my head or what I've seen my whole life, or is this really my informed opinion? You know, because sometimes it's like, I'll be like, wait, I don't think I've even thought about this topic enough to have an informed opinion. So this opinion is somebody else's, you know, and then I'll try to do my own research to have in it. Or sometimes I'll talk to people, and like recently I was talking to someone about like LGBTQ and transgender people. And then I just like stopped mid-conversation. It was like, you know what? I'm not knowledgeable about this topic to have an informed, you know, opinion. And I felt good to be able to say that, because I think sometimes, you know, we live in a world where everyone wants you to have an opinion about something. And it's like, I don't know, sometimes I don't have enough knowledge to really give an opinion on what I think about this topic. And maybe that's a clue for me to just go do the research. But either way, it's like, I don't want to speak if I don't really know how I really feel about something.
Yeah. I always say it's better to leave quiet than to say something incorrect. I would much rather leave a dialogue not having said anything than say something that I can't take back, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Let's talk about being a professional creative.
Mm-hmm.
There's a myth that I don't know who originated, but the notion is, if you're going to be a creative of any discipline, that you have to be a struggle, insert creative business title here. So whether it's a struggle rapper, struggle filmmaker, struggle actor, that struggle has to be associated with that. And recently you really started to hone in on all your creative expressions, whether it's freelance work or working with other artists in different capacities. So can you share how it was to leave the professional workspace and then become a professional creative?
It wasn't easy, because you really have to have that confidence in yourself. Like, I can do this at a high level, you know, because sometimes the whole like starving artist, struggling artist, you put yourself in that mindset where you think that you're still there. But then I look back like, yo, I've been doing this for 10 years already. I'm not a struggling artist anymore. Like, I know what I'm doing, you know, maybe struggling in the sense that I'm not making millions of dollars, but I think that money, it's always going to come and go. Like, that's not a thing I don't think that determines if someone is an expert or knowledgeable or successful. But the transition was difficult because I used to always keep the two separately. Like when I was working in corporate America, it was corporate America. I wouldn't talk about my music. I wouldn't talk about rapping. I wouldn't mention it at all. And then, you know, in my rapper world, I wouldn't mention being in corporate America or being in school or things like that. And then I realized, like, when I went to grad school, like, I could literally just bring the two together, like, because both areas helped me have skills in the other area, you know? So everything I learned from corporate, I can bring into being a professional creative. And then everything that I learned from being a creative, I can bring into a corporate space. So I started to blend the two together. And I think sometimes like rap music gets a bad rap. So because of that, I used to be fearful to tell, you know, an employer or somewhere I was working that I did rap music, because their mind might think I'm doing something crazy. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, I don't even want to mention it. And plus, you know, my music could be a little vulgar. I curse a little bit. I say certain things, and I don't know if that might be off-putting to certain people in a, you know, in a corporate environment. So I would always just never mention it. But I realized like all those things are a part of my skill set. I have to mention those things, because knowing that about me is going to make someone know what I can bring to the table. So now I'm more vocal to be like, I could be at a corporate interview and I'll be like, yeah, I rap. You know, here are my videos. You know what I'm saying? Because now you know that I can do production, I can do set design, I can do, you know, so it helps them know what kind of skills I can bring to this job. So I think that's the biggest thing, is like blending the worlds together, like feeling like I could be all things. I can be business minded and I can be extremely creative. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
That's a great point. And I think that a lot of creatives overall struggle with that, because I don't believe and I don't support, and nor do I accept the idea that you have to struggle in order to receive validation in your field. I think that be able to find financial stability and financial security, and if that happens to be outside of that professional endeavor, whether it was working a corporate job and then on weekends or at nights doing shows to be able to support and fund your lifestyle, then I'm right.
Yep.
And I did want to talk about is now that you released Paris, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to put the pressure on you, right? But I know people are going to be like, why didn't you ask, right? So you back in the studio, although you said this was an older track that you wanted to revisit now with, are you planning on releasing any more new music, or what can fans expect next?
Yes, I definitely do plan on releasing new music. I have a follow-up single, so that's already like in the tuck and ready, because a lot of my friends that I just like, I trust their creative opinion. I went to them like, hey, I got this song I'm about to put out, and everyone was like, you got other stuff to put out after? Because like once you get that attention, you want to keep it and have other things that you could, you know, have people listen to. I'm like, all right, I'll make sure I have something to to follow it up. I probably wouldn't have done that if people hadn't said to, because I just like to put out music when I feel like it's like I'm on my like Andre 3000 shit. Like, you know, when I pop in, I'll do a little 1, 2, and then I pop back out. But you know, I think I'm gonna keep it going, because I always feel my best when I'm being creative. And you know, people always say like, whatever you feel your best doing, like that's what you're meant, that's your purpose, that's what you're supposed to be doing. So, and I feel my best when I'm creating. So yeah, I'm gonna put out another single, and then a friend of mine, really talented producer and artist named Albie the Skywalker, him and I are gonna work on something where he's gonna executive produce maybe like a 3 or 4 song EP with me. He sent me the first song reference today, so I'm gonna write to that one, and that's gonna be really fun, because him and I are really good friends. So when you already have like a relationship with the person, it's like it makes it like more fun and just more easygoing. So I'm excited about that too.
I know this is way too premature to ask, but sonically, what can we expect, or what are you really being influenced by right now, if you are going to be planning to create a full body of work?
I've really been influenced by just fun music, like music that makes you happy, music that makes you want to dance, that makes you want to laugh, that makes you think of being outside with your friends at a cookout and having something to drink and two-stepping with your friends. Like, I just want to make music that feels good to me. I don't really care like what genre it is. If it just feels nice and I feel good about it, I feel like it's a vibe, I'm open to it. So, and I think that's why I like to have other people around as well, because other people can see you in a light that you can't see yourself. So they could tell me like, yo, you would sound good on this, like, or this beat would be good for you, you know. And I'm always open to having like I feed off of other creatives, you know. I like to be around other people that are working on music. Just that energy that they give me, it keeps me, you know, on my toes and makes me challenge myself to try different things.
Awesome. So I know a lot of artists are struggling right now, especially independent artists, with COVID, as it is taking away the financial means, whether it's shows or really being outside, as Black Twitter refers to it. How can fans support you right now at this time?
Fans can support by downloading and streaming Paris. They can support by, if they want any of my services, the freelance services I offer creative writing services. I offer artist bios and business proposals, resume writing, like website content, blog posts, you know, anything that anyone needs in that regard. I can help too. I do creative consulting. If someone needs like a creative director for a photo shoot or a music video or a marketing rollout for a project, I offer those services as well. I really just want to connect and work with other people. Excuse me. It's not necessarily about the money for me at this point in my life. I don't have like, I feel like I attract money, I make money, I spend money, but I don't have this like, you know, tie to it where it's like life or death for me. I'm more about like creating things that I can look back on and say like, you know, and add to my portfolio and my body of work. So